Hush, hush. We're getting ready to start. Okay. We've been actually broadcasting for 10 seconds now.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and open up the page. Make sure to mute it if you do open it. And I'm going to pop out the chat. And I'm going to have that in front of my page so I can see it. Oh, come on. There we go. Now, right now, we only have one person watching, and that appears to be me.
You are your own worst critic, I guess.
Yeah. Gotta get some soda. I love this one.
Oh, 2 watching now. That's me.
Yeah. I have used this every day since I started 3D printing. I have an older one that doesn't look as nice, but I made it and printed it, and it's every day since I made it, I've been using it. Okay.
So what link would I click to see this?
You would click the link to the... I posted a YouTube link in the...
Oh, I see it now.
Yeah. I'm going to post it in here just so that Garin can see it.
Yep, no, I see it now. I'm good.
Okay.
Let's see.
This is the link to the video if you want to go look at it and see the chat. Because I have the chat on screen.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah.
Hey.
Hello, Mark.
Hello there. Hi, Mark.
Okay. This is the special Mark. Now, have y'all been like plugging this on like social media and stuff, or just nobody knows this is happening?
I shared it on my Patreon, and they were excited.
Okay. Well, it's 8:04. It's time to rock.
Okay, give me 1 second. Sorry.
Plugging it in.
I'm just gonna see
And
if I
here's
can-
Ralph. Oh. Yeah.
Okay, browser.
Ralph is 7. So is Carlton.
Oh, kitty.
Carlton is the other black cat.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Oh,
All right, so
there we go.
can't find a camera. Sorry, I was saying this is going to be a podcast type thing. Do you know how to change out the image on Google Hangouts?
Not a single clue.
Nah, no idea.
That's okay. You'll just be ominous blue dot.
The image is usually your avatar on Google, on your Google account. So,
Let's see.
and this also means that most people aren't going to be able to see this because the most of what they're going to see is the blue dot, Mia or Miguel, because as the person broadcasting, I never see my own picture unless I actually come down here and click on it. Hi.
That's quite all right.
Yeah.
Let me do something
Please.
real quick.
Oh, that's a really handsome cat.
Well, he's also the stupidest of the three of them.
Oh.
Oh.
Now, by stupid, I don't mean stupid. I mean, he's average.
He's a walnut brain. I mean,
Yeah, but
that's
by the
offending.
same... The cat that normally sleeps here is smart enough to know how to open up doors.
Ah, there we go.
Yeah. She can open up doors by turning the door handle, jump on it, and wrench her body. She can turn lights on and off by jumping up and hitting the light switch.
Oh, wow.
She's
sweet and
Wow.
annoying.
She's 13 years old and can still jump high enough to hit the light switch.
Oh, so cute.
Dedicated.
She's faster and stronger than this guy despite being half his size. At 13.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, that's weird.
What's weird?
Sorry.
Hey,
Let's
cat.
see. I was in the reason icons changed was because I was in my brother had his account on here. Now I've got let's see. Why is that still registering as being there?
What are you doing?
Sorry,
That's
one more
okay.
try and then I'll be ready to go.
Oh,
Sounds good.
We believe in you.
and now look
It's
at
good to
this.
meet you, by the way.
Yeah. Now look at this.
That's adorable.
Arr, matey. I have a cat instead of a pirate. Instead of a pirate parrot. Yes. Are you a parrot cat?
He's so cute, though. Oh, kitty. Oh. Yeah, my cats are not that.
All three of mine will do this if given the chance.
Yeah, they don't hop on my lap. They just tolerate my existence.
Okay. I'm gonna...
Could be worse.
Yeah. And we have Billy Rubin. Hello! Alright. Ralph, I'm gonna put you back down on the floor now. Let's get you up. Notice that tail going straight up. Y'all know how to read cat tail language, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Tail straight up in the air, so yeah, he was fine. Okay. We got a couple people in. How many people does it say now?
8.
Okay, good. Let's go ahead and just get started. Thank you, Billy, because I know how much you love helping out people get attention for what they do.
All right, there we go. Now I'm not broadcasting twice anymore.
Okay.
Woo.
Now, I guess the first thing is, let's go ahead and go...
Yeah.
You know, this is a round table. Let's go ahead and go around the table. How long have you been sculpting, not just counting sculpting for printing, but just sculpting in general, or 3D modeling in general? Miguel?
Hi. So, hi, everyone who's watching. My name is Miguel Zavala. I go by MZ4250 on the internet. And let's see. I started actually back in undergrad. And so it was about 2 years in undergrad. And then I took a very long break up until about 5-ish years ago. So in total, when you include the 3D modeling for 3D printing stuff, and then college, it was about 7 years.
Okay.
Nice. So I will have been modeling for a year in August. And my first model I made.
Wait, what?
Yeah. Almost.
Oh, there. This is.
Oh, and my name is Mia, by the way. I go by M3DM for Mia. I'm on Thingiverse.
Yeah.
Please don't die. Like, that would be really awkward.
Yeah, it would.
That would be really
Especially
awkward.
since I'm the one hosting this thing.
Yeah.
It'd be the eternal stream of the dead guy in his chair going...
And we couldn't cancel it either because you're hosting.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, you get some really sweet views, though. I mean, like, wow.
And I just got soda up my nose.
Instant
Thank
YouTube
you.
fame.
Now, Matthew, what about you?
Well, I started 3D modeling in high school. Got a CAD and really enjoyed it. What really started doing, where I started doing everything though, was when my local community college got a 3D printer that they rented out time on, and I realized that I could make anything.
So about how long total? Because we don't know your age.
This would be about 10 years, I'd say.
Okay. Well,
So started just general modeling 10 years ago. Discovered Thingiverse 6 or 7. I'm not
okay.
sure. Time goes weird.
Now, in my case, I started modeling in 1998.
You win.
There's a program. There's
Yeah.
a program called Rhino 3D. It's a NURBS-based modeling program. It's great for artistic hard surface. In other words, it's not ultra precision like most CAD programs, but it's also not that great for organics because it
Okay.
does it does a lot of Boolean operations.
Gotcha.
Now, they had a free beta when it was first being created from about 98 to 2001. It's no longer free. It's on the order of about $1,000 now.
Okay, more than ZBrush.
Well, it's on in the same range.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what I started on. And then in 2001, I did my first commercial 3D work. and it is hideous.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, it is hideous.
I always feel the same way looking back at old work.
Maybe,
Yeah,
but we're
same.
talking. This thing looks like a puppet. Looks like a Muppet at best. I'm going to be pulling it up through here, so please just ignore some of what you're seeing on the screen. Those of you who are watching
Okay.
this. There it is. That, if you can wait 10 seconds and look on YouTube,
Okay.
that is what I did as my first commercial
Aw.
product.
It's adorable.
It has charm.
That's a
That was December of 2001. December 15 of 2001 was when it made its first sale. So,
I mean, hands are cool.
yeah. And that was also in a day and age when mapping was not exactly easy to do. It's Anyway, my first sculpting, the first couple of ones I kind of cheated. I took critters I had made as part of my day job that I have rights to, the wyvern and the hunting drake, both of which you can find on Thingiverse, and simply converted them into printable form. You know, closed up, sealed up, open areas with Dynamesh, etc. My first dedicated actual miniature that I could distribute that was a humanoid shape. That was April of last year. But ZBrush I've been using since version 3.
Cool.
The best part about ZBrush is so far, every single update has been free.
Yes.
And
amen.
now, they say on the site that we can't guarantee it'll stay that way, but they've also said that's how we cover our tail in case some future publisher decides to stop making the updates free.
Gotcha.
But, I mean, now, what have y'all? What's the first biggest lesson you learned about the difference between just sculpting for fun and doing it for printing?
Watch your meshes and watch closure points. You need to make sure everything's thick enough to be printed. Stuff can look really cool on the computer screen, but if it can't exist in real life,
You mean like a lot
pretty
of
much
the like a lot of the World of Warcraft weapons that just kind of have parts hovering?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and I've seen a lot of exported game files that just because they're hyper thin shortcuts that game makers do to save space, save RAM, but they just don't work on print stuff.
Like even modern meshes on video games, most hair is a series of flat planes, just single polygons with texture map and transmap. So that when you've got lots of them in front of each other, it looks like hair.
Yep.
Oh yeah, it's an entirely different animal. Some stuff is a lot harder to do in CAD or Design or ZBrush than it would be just to sculpt it by hand. That's one of the more frustrating things I sometimes
Jacob,
run into.
the person talking with the symbol instead of a face is Matthew. He's in charge of the Maker's Cult.
Well, in charge.
In charge. One of the sculptors therein. Miguel, what was the biggest lesson you all learned?
So I never modeled without concern for 3D printing. So I got a 3D printer first, I think in March of last year, and then by May I was sick of printing everyone else's stuff. So, but no, it's probably what I learned. The biggest thing probably be like detail retention. I would do these really fine details and stuff, and you just can't see them on 28mm print. So that was my biggest thing.
Yeah. Miguel?
So when I got back into 3D modeling about 5 years ago, I was so out of practice that I just immediately started modeling for the goal of 3D printing whatever it is that I was creating. So I can't tell you much of a difference between, modeling for professional reasons versus modeling for 3D printing. However, probably one of the biggest lessons that I've gained out of it was whenever I model something, I always try to consider how would supports work with this? How would this work? how would this work for an FDM person versus a resin person, and what is the best angle to print something on, because not everything should be printed as is. A lot of things need to be printed on their backs, upside down,
Angle
in
to
weird
the rear,
angles.
angle to the rear left,
Oh,
so
yeah.
that the forearm
Yeah,
is straight
exactly.
up and down.
Yeah,
And it's
So-
unfortunately it's just going to be different, FDM or resin.
yeah. So I try to consider for both. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, in my case, I've been modeling for a living since 2003. I mean, yeah, my first professional job was 2001, but 2003 was when I started able to make a living doing it. The big difference is, until I started doing it for 3D printing, everything I made had to be texture mapped, textured, rigged, and then have multiple morphs for shaping and personality and things like that.
Okay.
And in fact, the program that I used to work for is actually one that I use in my sculpting workflow. Have any of you ever watched one of my sculpting videos, how I do it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
That base figure, I modeled in 3D Studio Max, but I rigged it and made all those morphs in DAZ Studio, the program that I used to work for.
Okay. Gotcha. I was wondering what it was. I didn't recognize it, and I was like,
Well, DAZ Studio is a free download, so
okay, oh, that's cool. I just use ZBrush Mesh Mixer.
yeah. Well, it's,
Nice.
by having a base humanoid mesh, male and female, it really cuts down on the time it takes to make a humanoid character.
Oh, I still have a base mesh that
Yeah.
I use just in the T-pose. Because
Well,
there's no point in sculpting an arm every single time I'm going to sculpt a person.
Oh yeah. Well, it's like Black Omen, who does a lot of sculpting videos, and I see him a lot on the r/printed minis subreddit.
Yep.
He pretty much starts with a sphere every time.
Yeah, I noticed that. He's really good at it. I mean,
Well, he's also probably been sculpting a very long time.
yeah.
And meanwhile, I'm in the middle of curing a double-sized print of the figure I sculpted
Oh, nice.
Thursday. The problem is, it's already this is a failed print,
Oh,
and you can't see it, but his ear down here is also flattened. I'm still
that's
still
battle
gonna-
damage.
Yeah, I'm still gonna have it with me. What we've started doing is having the regular scale figure on the map and the double-sized figure, which is the one we paint, on next to our character sheets. That way, it's a lot easier to see
works.
who's who. And it's time to stick hit. This one also had a failed axe. What happened was
It's okay. We still love you, little guy.
Yeah, the supports broke off right there. I went and looked in, and there was one support at each tip of this axe. Just one. So I decided to increase the layer time a little bit and add a couple more supports, so hopefully it'll be nice and solid. But yeah, when I first started, like I said, I already had a lot of experience with the rendering side of things, making stuff to be rendered or animated, not printed, which means things like the eye socket was an empty hemisphere on the inside, and then the eyeball was sitting inside it so you could move the eye. Getting used to having that be a single solid piece.
Gotcha.
Now, I never was any good at making hair, so I didn't have to learn anything new there. I just had to teach myself from scratch how to make hair that looks like what I see on the miniatures. But the biggest thing I learned was, if I'm unsure if something will print well, zoom out until it's about 1.5 inches on my screen, and that's how it'll look when printed in resin. Zoom out until it's about 1 inch, and that's how it'll look when printed by a really good FDM printer.
Right.
I mean,
Okay.
once again, a miniature is in my case out in the car. One miniature I see a lot of people doing for testing printers is my Norse warrior, because he's got that chainmail hauberk, and he's just standing straight up, so it's a lot of chainmail to test. And I'm shocked sometimes how well that comes out on people who make FDM prints. And the same thing goes with my now nigh on infamous painting practice mini. Let me go ahead and click on my screen so people can see it. It was created just for the sake of having as many different textures on one figure as possible and in a pose that's easy to paint.
Mhm.
You got metal cloth, metal cloth, leather, skin, hair, wood, chainmail, and then you can either paint this as wood or make it a practice freehand, and then a gem on the center. As many different possible textures as I could, and still be paintable. Which brings up another
Very
thing.
Billy has a really good question here. He says, "What tools do you guys use? And what do you like or not like about them?" I think it's a great one to go over. So the main one that I use, it would be like ZBrush, for example. So that's all my sculpting and stuff. I really like using Mesh Mixer to fix my meshes and place supports manually. I do a lot of resin printing, and the slicer isn't great. So it's great to manually place supports because then you don't have to worry about, oh, it's not auto-generating correctly or whatnot, and you get a better understanding of what's successful or not.
Mm-hmm.
Is Autodesk Inventor, which is it's a CAD program that is really fantastic for armored segments, hard joints, and solid figures.
Oh, okay.
But is really, really bad at things like chainmail, hair, scales. So for those, I usually import to ZBrush and then just play with it in clay shape.
What was the name of that program one more time?
Autodesk Inventor.
Gotcha. I'm terrible at service modeling, so I might look into that.
Well, it's the same people who make Mesh Mixer, 3D Studio Max, and Maya. So.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
So
there's I've got the professional version from work, but you can also get the student version for free.
Oh, okay.
Nice. You guys have a lot of professional high-end programs. I use Blender because I don't want to spend money.
I get it.
And I've been using Blender for the past 5 years or so, and it's
it works.
yeah. I mean, and if it was a car, it would be a 2002 Altima. It would go from point A to point B, and it's just fine. And that's all I need. But yeah, no, it's a great program. Has everything I need for the most basic modeling that I need to do. I know that the newer version can do really good rendering and all, but I haven't had a real use for that. So besides Blender, obviously, another useful tool that I use to fix up my models before I post them is, of all things, Windows 3D Builder. It's got a really good interface for just fixing STLs before you post them, and it hasn't failed me. It's been pretty good. Other tools, I mean, Mesh Mixer is obviously very good for making things hollow, and
hoses and pipes too. Mesh Mixer is just king at making easy pipes.
Yeah. So yeah, those are like the primary tools that I use, and then of course when it comes to actually printing the things and then clearing them out, I'm sure that's a whole other discussion right there.
Yeah.
Now I've already said what I use. I use 3D Studio Max to make my base geometry. That includes making like the weapons and that. I use Daz Studio for posing them and setting up the props, and one little trick that I can do in Daz Studio, it's one easy trick, and never mind. And that's I can set up a blend shape that also moves the joint centers of the rigging as I turn the dial on, so that I can take my basic human and make him into a dwarf, an ogre, a troll, all sorts of dealing and stuff like that.
Solid.
Cool.
Now I will say, the base meshes that I use, I made in 2002. Long before 3D printing was even an option, because there was a game back then called Freedom Force. It was a one-part real-time strategy, one-part role-playing game based on Golden Age comic books, or Silver Age comic books. And because it was, a very, top-down looking down, it had a similar proportions to most 1990s era tabletop miniatures. So I was making my own base mesh for that game and never got around to finishing it. And then when I started getting into 3D sculpting, I figured, That'd be about the right thing to do. I had to rebuild the hands to actually have separate fingers and things like that. Even if I've got them rigged so that they bend together. But, the geometry is still separate. But it saved me a lot of initial setup time.
Cool.
Very cool. Early 2000s, the heyday of mod making strategy games.
Yep. Well, for the longest time, Freedom Force actually had the record for the most number of mods available.
That's cool.
For like 7 years, because so many, everyone put every superhero they ever liked into that game. I put 80 Transformers in, of which 40 could actually transform in game.
Very cool.
And I was almost going to be an animator, but kind of fell through. Mostly because most animation went to cleaning up motion capture, which is a lot more tedious. Okay. Next is, is there an interesting little trick that you've discovered that makes just life as a sculptor easier?
Oh yeah, for me it'd be customizing the UI. So anyone that's dabbled in ZBrush, the UI is awful. So once you have any idea what you like to use in it, it helped me so much to be able to pull my brushes where I want, so you don't have to dig through menus every single time. It's a huge time saver.
Okay.
In CAD, I think the most important thing would be to make sure to move your individual part pieces into solid assemblies and then make them one shell before moving on. Otherwise, you're just going to stack up parts and pieces until you have some real trouble rendering.
Okay.
How about Blender?
Well, have a really nice cocktail next to your desk as you're making something.
I can't do
really
that.
helpful.
10 out of 10.
I can't do that.
Oh, I hear you.
I'm allergic.
No, I kid. So for Blender, I think probably one of the best things that I was able to figure out was basically if you memorize the shortcuts on your keyboard, that saves you a lot of time. Honestly, just really good file management is just a very great way of speeding up your workflow because, after you make hundreds of models, it's very easy for you to just take pieces off of things here and there to speed things up. You don't have to make fresh dragon wings every time you make a dragon. You just grab one.
That is such a good point.
Or for example, making a chimera, just take that black dragon head right down in the center.
Yeah.
And use the body of the lion and just change the pose.
Yeah.
It's funny, that's such a good point to be able to not pretty much recycle and repurpose your models. I get really weird about that because I'm worried about them looking too the same, but honestly, Miguel and Valandar are totally right. It saves you so much time, it's still going to look really good.
Well, look at it this way.
Well, it helps unite a theme of an army or group.
Also, if you go back and look at some of the 90s especially era Games Workshop models, 5 different Elven war dancers that were the same figure, but details changed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, Mia, Jacob has a question for you.
Oh, I see it. How has been my Kickstarter, and do I plan to do more? Oh yeah, my Kickstarter has been amazing. I feel kind of embarrassed because my goal was $100, and no, I'm serious. That I was so excited to get $100. I think we're over 7,000 now, and I'm so humbled by it. So I'm definitely gonna do more because I wanted just to model animals. That was the whole point of it. Everything you've seen there, the horse. What else have I done? Obviously, the raccoon, the crab. It's the first time I've ever modeled those before. So it's almost like a crowd-funded scholarship to learn anatomy. It sounds really silly, but honestly. So I definitely plan to do more Kickstarters. I have one coming up maybe at the end of this year, doing all women in D&D. So you don't see a lot of whole women orcs, maybe a samurai, all that kind of stuff. So I'm really excited for that.
That's very cool. And congratulations.
Oh,
I know. I was so freaking blown away.
Cyclopedia Anatomicae.
Yeah.
Godsend. I take it you recognize it, Mia?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, all these wonderful images.
I can't read, so...
Yeah, but it's pictures.
Oh.
See, horse anatomy.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. I mostly Google images, but it's so nice to have. I like books. Who doesn't like books? You know.
Especially since one of the worst mistakes I ever made about 5 years ago was I decided I was going to give a critter I was working on rear legs like a bear.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I needed a good anatomical reference for how the bone and muscle structure was on the legs of a bear. And I made the mistake with Safe Search off so that I could get these more grotesque anatomical designs of doing a
I'm so sorry.
Google image search for bear muscle. Now, if you are unfamiliar as to why that is a bad thing, and this is Carlton, by the way.
Oh, kitty.
If you're unfamiliar with why this is a bad thing, there's a certain use of bear as a slang term in the LGBTQ plus community.
Yeah.
I am cis. Yeah, I am cis white, so. That's not exactly what I was hoping to find. That's actually why I got that book.
I mean, type
Books are
reference
so much
when you Google
safer.
search. Well, yeah, but you can just type reference and you'll get it right.
Because then I got all sorts of pages from DeviantArt of people in pose references that fit that description.
I have not had this problem when I modeled a bear. I did the same thing. Maybe I don't know what you're searching usually with Google.
I have discovered that people seem to think that a spear is the sexiest of all weapons. I searched for
I mean, using
spear
either
poses
references
for a while ago, and it was all
works.
just well, I mean, it was all just almost pole dancing D&D characters.
Yeah.
Like, come on, guys! I just want to see a guy stabbing another dude with a spear. Can the internet not provide me with that?
Nope.
That's something where I've got a minor advantage in that I've got an intense library of various swords, spears, axes, maces, halberds, flails, etc. that I've made over the past 20 years.
So, Ben has a question about Blender 2.8, and I guess I'll answer that. So, Blender 2.8 is they've made a lot of neat little shortcuts to make life a little easier for you when you're 3D modeling. The rendering options are really, really solid. They have versions of rendering now that's basically this live action almost. That's really sweet. The downside to Blender 2.8 though is that there's still unfortunately some bugs that they need to work out. For instance, if you add a modifier to a model, like let's say a subdivision surface model modifier, if you were to switch to sculpt mode, your modifier would no longer show up. So the workflow from 2.79 kind of just gets shot in the foot right there. So
Yeah.
I'm still using 2.79 only because they haven't worked out that bug yet. But it's the beta; they'll figure it out. So I'm sure by next year it'll be fine.
And I'll be honest, I tried 2.8 on my old computer. See, when I did and finished the Titans that I did, all those giant models, the really, really big giant models, I was on an old computer, an 8-year-old computer. And when I tried Blender 2.8 on it, guess what happened?
Crash.
It crashed so hard it shut down.
Yeah.
My computer just shut down, and I was
Nope.
I was like, oh no. So yeah.
There's a second question here. They asked about the Critical Role character that I made recently, and if I'm going to make more. So I made Jester recently from Critical Role Season 2 for fun, because over the past couple of years, people have asked me repeatedly, oh, you should make a Critical Role character. It'd be so much fun. And I just never got around to it for two reasons. A, because I was catching up on the Acquisitions Incorporated C-Team show, and I didn't want to have multiple universes in my head. But B, because I know that the fan base is really intense about Critical Role, and I was
good
a
word
little
for it.
worried that if I even messed up one hair follicle, I would get doxxed or something. No, I'm kidding. So I was a little nervous about it, but
That's understandable.
yeah. So the question is if I'm going to make more, and initially I was going to make more as I watched the show. The problem is that someone pointed out very wisely that they're making their own miniatures, and I don't want to like accidentally compete with them or take away business from them. So like
Oh,
so, like how I approached Wizards of the Coast, I approached the Critical Role people recently asking, hey, are you okay if I make these models? It would just be for fun. I would make different poses. It wouldn't be exactly like the stuff that you guys made. I'm still waiting for a response. I've been told that they don't really care, that I could probably do it anyway. But I'm just going to wait, just like, with Wizards back in the day. So, we'll see what happens. So, if I get a response from them, then yeah, I'll make them when I have time. It'll be fun. But until then, I should probably wait because I don't want to like take away business from them.
Okay.
that's super solid of you. Respectful
fair.
too.
Yeah.
I'd like to real quick respond to TC, who said, I still don't think I'd recommend Blender to anyone. Even Houdini Apprentice is nicer UI for general 3D. I'd like to say, really and truly, the right program is not the same for everyone. Everyone is more comfortable with a different program. Even if you put someone who's never touched them before, there might be someone who finds Blender easier to use because, at least how I remember Blender was you found the same thing in 3 different menus. But some people prefer 3D Studio Max, some people prefer Maya, some people prefer Sculptress. I've actually seen people who make miniature sculpts with Sculptress, which is, for those who don't
That's
know...
what I started with. I love Sculptress.
It's
My
a
hat's
free
off to them.
program. Yeah, it's a free program originally created as a free alternative to ZBrush and then bought by Pixelogic, and they kept it free. They just incorporated some of the dynamic subdivision features into ZBrush as optional.
Well, I recommend Blender just because it's free, and I recommend Sculptress because it's free. And you can see that there's a theme going on here.
Yeah.
No, I don't
Yeah.
pick up.
I mean,
Nah, okay, it's free.
if you ask some of my regular viewers, I do also regularly recommend either Blender or Sculptress simply because they're free. But then I also say that if you can afford it, if you've got more uses for it, or you're going to go professional, I do recommend at least trying the ZBrush trial.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, if you're doing this professionally, I mean, I know that 3D Studio Max, Maya, ZBrush, those are like the things that you just need to know. But if it's just for fun, I mean, I dealt with Blender and learning how to use it, and that's why it worked out so well for me. And I know for a fact that its UI is like...
Its
something.
UI is designed by committee, where each member of the committee is on a different continent.
Yeah, and it's...
No, it just literally is.
It takes adapting, and like I'm used to it now. Like I've been doing it for years, so I'm fine. But like for somebody starting from brand new, I could totally understand why you would not want to jump into that first.
If you're starting from zero, I'd recommend any free programs you can get your hand on. Try a couple of them, see which one works for you best. I use Inventor because that's what I'm used to. For years, I did it 8 hours a day, just part of structural engineering. And so I'm very, very familiar with how everything is laid out, all the different tools. If it wasn't for that, I'd probably just be entirely on ZBrush.
Now,
That makes sense. Personally, like I recommend, again, Sculptors because it's free, but if you're just starting out, I do not recommend the ZBrush free trial. You're not going to know where to even start, honestly. And like the first time you draw on the screen, it's a bunch of little like tannish blocks, and it just can be a huge mess. If you've never touched it before, I definitely recommend like Sculptress or even Tinkercad, just to like get an idea what it feels like to sculpt digitally.
Yeah. On the other hand, when you do get ZBrush, this is the only time I will say this, the official video tutorials are some of the best I've seen. Because they don't just tell you what they're doing, which a lot of the YouTube tutorials don't, They also tell you why they're doing it and what the other options are in that tool and what they do. And not just the annotation tool annotates things. No, they explain it, what it means, and what the effect is, and they'll show it to you, and then hit Control-Z to undo that. But also, if you learn how to use one 3D program, let's say you learn to use Blender, well, once you learn how polygons actually behave when they're, when you do like a subdivision level, they behave the same way in any program. You just have to learn a new program's terms and where to find its tools, and you can transfer that knowledge to almost any other similar type of program, like Blender to 3D Studio Max, or that sort of thing,
or Mesh Mixer.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's one of those things where the skills are going to cross over. No time you spend on a 3D program is going to be wasted. Because once you have the basic idea of how to move around in it, you're pretty much set for a majority of programs.
Mhm.
It just depends on finding all the options that you're looking for.
Jacob wants to know if everyone here is self-taught or if anyone took classes or gone to school for 3D.
Good question. Self-taught completely.
Same here.
High school class. Other than that, self-taught.
Oh, cool. That's so really cool. Got in high school. Love that.
I got my degree in 3D art way back. It was a focus on animation at the time, but I was actually better at modeling. And so yes, I got my bachelor's in it, and then I let it go, obviously, for nearly half a decade. But I taught myself how to use Blender. And what you said earlier was absolutely correct. If you understand a basic 3D program, the knowledge and the experience will transfer over. So I learned Maya and I learned ZBrush when I was in college. And when I picked up Blender, it kind of just all came back to me. It was really kind of interesting. And so that's very much true.
That is so cool. I had no idea you went to school for it. Like, I went to school, graduated with a degree in mechanical engineering, which is just totally unrelated.
Hey, me too.
Because I do. Hey, that's cool. Anyway, but no, it's funny. Like, your modeling reflects that for sure. And it's ironic because I learned SolidWorks, but I don't do hard surface modeling well at all. Working on it.
I went to school and college. I started in 1989, and
I wasn't born.
I was a theater major.
I went to class. I went to school for a year and a half. Bombed out because I spent more time in the university center in the green room than I did in class, and ended up joining the Marine Corps for 5 years.
Hey.
Came back, did computer tech support for a couple of years, including tech support for Lego Mindstorms, the robotics kit, and then started doing this. Well, not this, but the CG stuff. And I have seen that there are several things that are very commonly, a very common crossover. And I've actually done a couple of videos about it. Anatomy, proportion. It doesn't matter if it's 2D or 3D. If you don't have, you got to know the rules to break them.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
For example, the whole reason I did my Tarrasque sculpt was the Tarrasque in the monster manual could not move. It's the way it depicts its shell is that it's a single hard thing from the back of the neck all the way halfway down the tail.
I did not know that.
It could not move its torso at all. And the musculature they gave it was of questionable origin. So I decided, I started with a Carnosaur. Not like T-Rex type thing. Gave it larger arms, more like a Therizinosaur. And some of the anatomy was based on avian, some of it was based on primate. And instead of single hard shell, I made it look more like bands with scutes on top.
Okay.
Again, borrowing from nature instead of just trying to make it all up.
Oh yeah, no, I get that. When I modeled my cockatrice, I don't have a base mesh for that, obviously, because it's a chicken dragon pretty much, and all the references look ridiculous because it's a chicken dragon. So actually, a lot of my references from like Monster Hunter and video games and then obviously their anatomy and creature anatomy, and it goes a long way to have an understanding of muscle and bone.
I've done entire modeling projects because I've been frustrated with how something depicts something that just doesn't make any physical sense.
Oh, I see
Like,
ask.
I did a Terminator project based roughly on GW stuff a while ago that I ended up pretty much discarding just to see how a physical human being would fit into that bone-breaking abomination of armor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm kind of cheating here because the majority of my work was based off of all of the works from the good folks at Wizards. So I kind of just went off of what they made, and it's pretty easy. I mean, making obviously the stuff to transition onto 3D is a whole different world of its own. But it's nice. I feel. Yeah, I'm not making things up.
Jacob just asked a question that has no answer.
Oh, I can answer that. So what is cleaning up ZBrush brush?
What brushes would you use?
Yeah.
All of them.
Yeah, so I would say that specifically smooth brush, obviously, because that's what it sounds like, but also trim dynamic. Trim dynamic is fantastic because it's going to take whatever surface you have and then try and put a plane on it, essentially. Yeah. But it doesn't do it too roughly. It's actually pretty smooth. So the combination of trim dynamic and smooth brush, it's great. By the way, you hold shift to get the smooth brush. Yeah. Try and open up the brush palette and click smooth. ZBrush will yell at you and be like, just hold shift.
Yeah. And the polish brush is also good for being a halfway point between those two.
Sorry.
The polish brush.
Okay.
If you make it to subtract Z sub and ramp up the intensity and I'll make it a large brush, you can polish off an area, and it will be kind of like halfway in between smoothing and trim planer. In fact, a lot of what making a rock, take a spear and just start doing that on various planes. Then go in and add in cracks and detailing.
Yep.
But cleaning up a model from looking rough to clean like for a blender, a lot of times you can actually get that just by hitting subdivide. Because a lot of times when people say something looks rough, they mean it's low poly.
Oh, that's true. But at the same time, if it actually is rough, if you subdivide it, it takes forever to actually smooth it out with a brush. I try and work in really low division, actually, to begin with. When I try and smooth stuff out, it just takes forever.
In any form of sculpting, it's usually a good idea to start low and make your forms. And then go up a degree and make the smaller forms, and then go up and smaller details for the next degree.
I mean, that's basically like what every art form is expected of you to understand. If you make a painting, if you're making a clay sculpture, you have to start with the base form first before you can get into the details. And it's very true in 3D art. It's before you can make a gibbering mouther, you need to have that little circular spear and have to work from there. So yeah, that's very accurate.
Yep, because no amount of detail work is going to make it look good. If your anatomy or general shape is goofy looking, it's just going to look goofy.
Okay, I think what Jacob is saying was when converting a low poly model to a higher poly, and a lot of them, they don't have reinforced lines at sharp edges, so when you subdivide, it rounds it all off. That's actually something I wouldn't do in ZBrush.
Same.
I would take that into a modeling program and add in, for example, if you've got a sharp right angle, I'm going to go and flip my thing, a sharp right angle, and you want this edge to be kept sharp, you'd put in an additional line of edges here and one here. And what will happen is it'll still get slightly rounded, but it'll keep the majority of the shape and keep it sharp. So, for example, when I do swords, I have very thin extra edges on each side of the edge of the blade. Billy Ribbon wants to know where she can follow us on social media.
Everywhere, honestly.
We are all places at all times. You don't.
We'll put links in the description after the live stream.
Yeah, and I'm going to try to get a copy of the feed to these three so that so they can also put it up on their channels and that. Here's a question for you. How many of y'all have actually done sculpting in putty or clay in the past? Like, clay, polymer clay, green stuff, or milliput, anything like that?
Not once.
A lot.
From scratch?
Before, just from wireframes.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah. So before, when I was younger and geekdom was a thing that wasn't so much available, late 90s, early 2000s, we're really spoiled by being able to find everything. There was a brief period in which Hobby Shop opened and then closed and left all of us with parts of armies. So I started getting really into green stuff sculpting to try to fill in the gaps.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Miguel?
Well, I mean, obviously when I was very little, I played with Play-Doh, and Play-Doh is great because you can make anything and then you can eat it. And
I used to make my own Play-Doh.
Yeah.
It's so good, especially with some barbecue sauce on the side.
But it has that weird aftertaste.
Well, salty.
Has that weird aftertaste, though.
No. But no, I all of grade school, high school, college, I dealt with traditional art, so sculpting with regular clay and all kinds of stuff. So no, I was very comfortable with making things out of clay before I even jumped into 3D. So yeah, it helps.
In my case, I started playing around with green stuff in the late 90s, right after I got home from the Corps. And around 2002, I don't know if any of y'all have ever heard of the game VOR, V-O-R. It was a little squad-based sci-fi war game, and I had made an army for that particular game. And then I got approached by someone who had just gotten the contract to do a tabletop war game for aliens versus predators versus marines.
Very cool.
15 millimeter scale, and they wanted me to sculpt the queen alien.
Ooh.
As soon as I had finished it, been paid, and they had the miniature on the way to the mold makers, a company in Germany who had the rights to a board game immediately sued, and blah blah blah. Long story short, company folded before the lawsuit ever got finished, and the miniature never even got molded. I have no idea where that sculpt is now.
Well, that sucks.
Yeah. But so yes, I've done actual miniature sculpting like Matthew, and I've done some clay sculpting, but nothing that was really worth anything. So for me, when I first started playing in ZBrush, it felt like working with putty or clay. Because the way it behaved, it felt like I was doing something. Also, a Wacom stylus or a Wacom tablet or something like that is almost indispensable with any kind of sculpting. Because the difference between using a mouse and using a Wacom is like the difference between using a rattle can and an airbrush. You just don't have the precision. You don't have the ability to control intensity. None of that.
Mm-hmm. I would say mouse isn't even an option, personally.
Yeah.
I mean, I only use a mouse, mostly because I'm just used to it now. But
really?
Maybe yeah.
Oh wow! I had
On a
no
3D
idea.
mouse.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that the pen and the pad situation is supposed to be a whole different workflow, but I'm just kind of used to the mouse, and it's
if
nice.
it works, it works.
Yeah, I mean, if it works, it works, and it's right here. It's really cute, it goes click, click, click. It's nice.
Yeah, my people were asking.
Mouse for me.
This is my tablet. It is a Wacom. I mean, it's the Intuos, the classic. And this is my stylus and stylus holder.
Very nice.
Yes, I one of the first things I printed on my CR10 was a stylus holder based on a Green Lantern power battery.
That's cool.
And you
That's very smart.
stick the stylus in where the ring would go.
That's really cute.
Very cool.
I have a tendency to make things that I still use. That my cup holder, that thing, my gaming box. I don't know how many of you have seen that on Thingiverse. I made a gaming box that looks like a book. You need a CR10 or similar large-scale printer to print it, and
I see.
because among other things, it's got a slot here that fits my tablet. It's got space for my dice, miniatures, and a few other things. And it has a dice tower built in. I use this.
Oh, very cool.
I use this twice a week on Wednesdays and Saturdays.
Solid.
That's cool.
Oh, I'd love to get back into indie. Children, though, they take up some time.
Well,
Thanks.
Yeah, me neither. I'm good.
I got lucky. I got lucky in that the local hobby shop that runs D&D Encounters is just straight down that road, right outside my house. And now we did end up mutinying against the person who was running the game because he was getting more and more bizarre with. We had to fight for using our abilities as written, and she was giving the bad guys regeneration and ability to avoid any and all attacks of opportunity, and
Oh, fun.
Oof.
yeah.
That's weird. That's not right.
So we mutinied, and we kept the same characters. One of us took over because we were doing Dragon Heist Waterdeep, and we're still gaming. We're doing the dungeon now, the Dungeon of Mad Mage, and we're also having a Saturday game on top of that. So hey,
That's cool. I'm playing it 2 games that happen bi-weekly, and it's just two very fun, very long-lasting homebrew games, and that's nice. I'm not gonna
That's cool.
delve into that.
by the way, Miguel, Jacob wants to know if you call your mouse Mickey Mouse or Mighty Mouse.
I just call it Mouse. I keep things very, professional. It's just Mouse.
Not Mr. Mouse?
No, just Mouse.
Okay. I actually used to know a girl nicknamed Mouse. Because she was 6 foot tall and everyone called her Mouse.
Well, there you go.
Yep. Well, she was a very, very sweet young lady, but eh. So, I guess the next question would be, what made you decide to sculpt for miniatures? I think we can guess yours, Matthew, because you already mentioned why you sculpted with green stuff.
Yep. Middle of nowhere, our miniature supply had been cut off. We just needed game tokens.
And online sales were too expensive?
Well, not as available in the beginning. I mean, we're talking early 2000s. eBay had just started coming into its own right, but it wasn't really that popular from my experience. I didn't really hear about it until later, to tell the truth.
And you couldn't get on the Games Workshop site and order miniatures back then. Not like you can now.
Not to my knowledge, anyway. I remember the catalogs, which you could pull stuff out of, but slow process, international shipping.
Mm-hmm. You mean they didn't ship from the Memphis
just wasn't
site?
as fun of having a place to meet and hang out. Hmm?
I said they didn't ship from the
No,
Memphis
it's just
site?
very, very slow.
Okay. Mia?
Yeah, so I do a tabletop minis
Didn't
just
know
because
that.
I like fantasy.
They may have, they may have not. I just remember waiting a long time.
Okay.
That's the biggest thing.
So I take it you've been gaming since before you've been sculpting.
Oh yeah, way before.
Yeah.
I played my first tabletop game, Dungeons and Dragons, like 2 weekends ago. Prior to that, I never even played, which is funny. I'm pretty extroverted, but I'm not very social. So I play a lot of like single player campaign games, like Dragon Age.
Okay. And what about you? What made Miguel? What made you decide to start doing the entirety of the Monster Manual in the first place?
Yeah.
So played D&D since I was 6 years old, and I didn't have the minis that I wanted. And Jen, my awesome, amazing, perfect in every way wife over there, hi baby, she about 5 years ago she told me, "Hey Miguel, you know 3D sort of, and the DC library has a 3D printer. Why don't you make a mini and you can use it in our games?" And she basically dragged me kicking and screaming to the DC library to give it a shot. And she was right as usual. Hi, boo. And yeah, it was at that moment that I was hooked. I saw the first thing that I created is actually right here. It's a black dragon, and it is just a collection of spheres. As you can see, there's like no 3D modeling skill at all in this. It's literally just a bunch of spheres. And but I posted it on Reddit, and Reddit loved it. And then I made a red dragon, blue dragon, then a red, and then someone said, "Why don't you just make the whole monster manual? It would be fun." So 1,600 plus models.
Small task.
Yeah.
I'm done with a lot of the books. I'm right now at Mordenkainen's Tomb of Foes, making guys like this, and yeah, it's just I just wanted minis, and it's been a really fun trip.
Okay. Did you print the chains, or is that just like little jewelry chains that you put on there?
Oh, Michaels, man. Michaels has great jewelry chains. You can just put those things on anything. They're great. So now, if you go to the jewelry section, Michaels, there's so many chains.
By the way,
everything.
You can also go get the large, round gold or silver glitter, and it's the right size to look as coins for making like a hoard. Yeah. Anyway.
Hey, just because you're printing doesn't mean you have to stop sculpting.
Stop crafting.
It's
just another tool in the arsenal.
Exactly.
I also got one other thing at Michael's. I found a nice long hematite bead necklace. Cut the cord, and I used the beads as agitators in my paints.
Oh, nice.
Because since hematite is already an iron oxide, it doesn't rust. And number two, they've got enough mass to really churn up the paint. So when you've got something like a army painter, which is you really have to shake the bejesus out of them. It really helps.
Oh yeah.
Am I the only regular painter here?
I've painted almost 5.
Because
I do paint some stuff, but
let me see if I can get this to focus in. This is one of the orcs from my recent Kickstarter. I'm going to have to actually open up my daggone camera settings to do this.
Oh, he's so cute.
And let's advanced autofocus. There. And see, I even let me.
That's cute.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I went ahead and I made his cheeks and nose slightly redder. His chin is slightly bluer.
Yeah.
In general, the light from the monitor is making him more blue than he really is. Like a cowhide shield.
Yeah. I try to paint all of the D&D pieces that I make, and I definitely learned a lot from just various tutorials online. And I found that once there's primer on top of the model, it's no different than any other, miniature that you can find at a store and just paint away.
Yeah.
So
well,
the same tricks.
To be honest, there are some techniques that don't work as well on an FDM printed miniature simply because of the layer lines. But there's other
vehicles.
Techniques. Yeah, vehicles are different.
Yeah, you can build up the paint pretty well to not really fill it in, I suppose. But after a couple layers, they start to vanish into the background.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah, you could also use smoothing agents like a light coat of XTC 3D is what I used when I was only doing FDM, and
Yeah.
it works pretty well. It has to be a light coat though, because if you put too much, it'll like
Clog
get rid
everything.
of all. Yeah, it'll just
Mhm.
clog up
Yeah.
everything.
Well,
Yeah, so there's that.
I should know. I recently purchased the entire line of Warcolors, a paint from Cyprus of all places, and I have discovered they have one particular subline that is, oh my god, it is worth everything I ever paid. They call it one coat.
Yeah.
It's as thin as most inks. It's as thin as a wash, but it is literally one thin coat is opaque on black or
Nice.
white primer. It is amazing. Even like the colors that are typically very transparent, like reds and yellows, absolutely opaque. It's so thin that it doesn't clog up any kind of detail. It's amazing. On the other hand, a lot of the regular paints are a lot more translucent than you would expect, but that's beside the point.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and their inks.
I'm trying to.
This is the yellow ink from Vallejo. It's mostly opaque. This is the yellow ink from Warcolors, and you can see it's a lot more transparent.
Mm-hmm.
You can see my finger behind the bottle. Yay.
Wow.
And so for like glazes or shifting your tones, they're much better than like the Vallejo or the Army Painter or the Citadel. So.
I'm actually really enjoying the contrast paints, to tell the truth. They're not the end all be all of painting,
No, they're not, but
they're a great shortcut, especially if you've gotten a
contrast paint. Yes, I have a few of those
great
too.
shortcut.
This one is Telesar blue. It's a light and medium dark blue together. I used it on. Oh, it's also in my miniature box outside. I used it on my on the pants of my flesh golem. What I like to say about it is that it replaces a technique. It replaces washes, and it also makes it easy to make a fast run on an army that uses solid colors, like Eldar, Space Marines, Tau, and even to an extent Tyranids, because you don't mind that the purple and green blend at the edge on a Tyranid because it's organic. They do.
Mm-hmm. See, I'm throwing into the YouTube chat an image because unfortunately I can't show anything right now. Let's see.
Well, so
So these
Jonathan
are
has a
some.
question, and the question is, actually Jacob has a question. He says, okay, over the past year, what would you say is the biggest thing that made your models better? I gave him a very brief answer, but basically, for me, what made things different was unlocking the Dintopu sculpting on Blender. It's basically ZBrush, but in Blender, like a ghetto ZBrush. So that definitely like unlocked a lot of detail into my models. That's why I was able to pull off making this the Sibriax. The Sibriax demon is just an orb, and I just kept messing with the Dintopu stuff and going all out until it became this monstrosity, and it was just fun. But yeah, this was just a spear, and then it just went crazy. And
So cool.
yeah, it is. The other thing that made my models improve over the year was getting the Anicubic Photon, like just a resin printer that's very simple but very effective, was pretty nice. And then the third thing was just understanding how to paint the minis better. A layer of shade after you put down your base color, and then let it dry. And then putting on that medium coat, and then the highlights. It's just nice. Oh, actually, there is one more tool, and it's this magnifying stand that Jen got me. couple that with this magnifying goggles that I have, and yeah, I know I feel like I'm old as hell with all this magnification stuff, but boy, it helps make my eyeballs. I can tell you that much.
So for me, like the thing that's super helpful with modeling would have been posing, better poses. Detail, if your pose is really stiff, it really takes away from the model itself.
Matthew?
In the past year, picking up the Ender 3 has been a big change. The just incredible machine for the price point. After that, the Anycubic Photon really let me go crazy on the details. I've kind of been doing the same thing software-wise that I've always done. But
For me, one of the best things that I've found is what's really helped things like chainmail and that's using the noise modifier, the surface noise modifier with an alpha on a mapped section. I'll like extract out where the tunic is, for example, take that into a different program and map it, bring it back in, because I want to map it even, not with that crazy nonsense that UV Master gives you, and then give it a tiling texture that it then turns into a mask, and I can extrude out with inflate the links of chainmail or the scales, things like that. The second biggest thing is realizing that even FDM can get better detail than I thought. Things like the chainmail. And that I said at the very beginning, the Dragonborn Barbarian that I finished the other day. Let me go ahead and click on myself. Dragonborn Barbarian that I finished the other day. It's, you know, yes, it's clear resin, and yes, it has a flaw. It didn't print well there, but you can see a lot more of the detail in the arms and legs with the scales and the scutes than I thought I could. And even on the head, you can see a lot more with the resin. So I can actually start to push myself more and put more detail in, and hopefully someday, maybe in the distant future, I might vaguely come close to where Duncan Luca is. Did I just kill the conversation?
So I didn't want to interrupt you if you were still talking. Now there was a question in the comments asking like how to pose. Looks like a skeleton or remodeling. So I know rigging is a great way to do it, but for me there's a lot of mesh deformation, so I don't like doing it that way. What I do is I actually off areas where there's joints. So like for instance, like from the elbow, the fingertips, from the shoulder to the elbow, there'd be two different sections. And then so cutting up like an action figure pretty much, and then posing each of those parts individually. It sounds really tedious, but honestly it's so much cleaner this way.
In my case, my base mesh is pre-rigged. I've already rigged it. I made it in 3D Studio Max, and then I rigged it in a program called Daz Studio because I've been working in it for years, decade and a half. And so it took me less than a day to get it fully rigged, and then I can pose it in Daz Studio, then bring it into ZBrush and sculpt on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do. I actually do a little bit of both. Usually when I start a new model, I'll have a base mesh and it'll have a skeleton and everything, and I pose away. If I have to do adjustments though, long after I've got rid of the skeleton, yeah, same thing like what Mia said is, selecting areas of the body that would rotate, right from the joints of your elbow or from the shoulder, and then from the pivot point from there, or from the base origin from there, you just rotate where you need to, just like how the body would. That's a very fast way of making the adjustments that you need to. On the occasion, I have put a new skeleton back into something to make an adjustment, but that's very rare, and I prefer to avoid that because it's just a lot of extra work.
I agree.
As a side note on posing, one thing a lot of people forget about, and I've even seen people forget about it in high budget movies, and that's our collarbones move.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Have y'all ever watched Final Fantasy Spirits Within?
Yeah.
There's one scene that is stuck in my brain since I first saw it as I walked past the television where it was playing. They were getting up from a set of chairs, and every single one of the characters, their collars were frozen, and all of their arm movement was directly from the shoulder, and it looked like it was so unnatural.
Very alien.
There are two key rules for making a pose that looks natural. The first is that the line of the hip and the line of the shoulder should never be parallel to each other or parallel to the ground.
Yes.
The second is that if you want to put the pose to have no motion or no, not look like it's moving forward, you have it balanced. If you want it to look like it's moving, have it appear to be off balance. I did a sculpt for the Lost Dragons Kickstarter by Danny from Miami.
He's the best.
I did a Dragonborn who was running forward. Well, he happened to be in an icy terrain, so he had a spar of ice that was resting against his leg that, in the miniature, actually helped provide support for that portion of his body. So he was still only touching the base by his toe, but he was fully supported as he was almost diving forward.
We have a question. Do you sculpt with keeping in mind how to paint it or no?
Nope.
You kind of have to. I've made some hooks and joints between legs before. You always want to have either it in assemblies where you can reach all parts of the models, or as separate components that can be put together and taken apart later. Peg joints are incredibly useful for taking off the back sections of cloaks and whatnot.
Yeah, I will confess that when it comes to cloaks and things, I do tend to be a little bit less thinking about it. But usually, when I'm painting something with a cloak, it's gonna be almost black up in there between where the cloak is right in front of the back to begin with, because of what's called ambient occlusion. So, as long as I just
try to have it lay on the model as much as possible, so you don't have to worry about getting a paintbrush there in the first place.
Yeah. Well, it's things like, perfect example, this one, I explicitly designed this figure to be as easily painted as possible because it's a painting practice figure. You've got the hardest thing to reach actually is the backside of the pouch, and that you can still reach pretty easily. He's wide open. He's just almost. This could actually be molded in one press on a typical 1980s era miniature mold maker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I model, I always try to keep in mind that I am going to print this and I am going to paint it. So that's why when I make cloaks, I like to add a lot of extra ripples. That way, when you dry brush onto the model, you can get the highlights like really, really well. So that's what I usually do.
Trying to see if I have any of my cloak-bearing models in here. Yeah, I do actually. My overweight bard. I strictly made this because someone dared me to, but he's a nice, charming young man with a nice Ripley cloak, and unfortunately, as you can see, there is a portion of the cloak that is very close to the back. But again, it's so close that in the real world there'd be something called ambient occlusion, and I've got my visitor back. Ugh. But yeah, cloaks ripple and flow beautifully if they're done right.
Very good points. So I'm not time of it here, so I'm gonna end up having to sign off here. But thank you so much for having me, and it was a lot of fun answering those questions too.
It's been wonderful having you here, and I'll be sending you the link to the Dropbox for the final recording probably tomorrow morning.
It's okay.
Bye, guys.
All right. See ya.
All right.
Bye. Okay. Now, do we have any other questions? Either as a sculptor or as a gamer, even? I would like to say, just remember, I don't think any of us here started good.
No.
Everyone has done. I mean, I've been making a minimum of 4 sculpts a week for almost a year and a half, and I started out already knowing most of what I know because I've been doing 3D for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
My first sculpts were just balls and cylinders linked together and stacked on top of each other. They were hideous, but they were functional. And from there, 10 years later, with a pretty good break, now we're starting to get somewhere.
Yeah, and then we saw Miguel's first sculpt.
Yeah, here he is.
A whole lot of balls. May as well have been meta balls.
Yeah, there's just a bunch of balls, but they got somewhere.
Some of y'all have no idea what meta balls are. They were. The only way to explain it would be they're the great granddaddy to Z spheres and Dynamesh. Now, Billy, you know that Mia is like not natural. You know, there are some people who learn the basics quickly, and then the advanced stuff, they have a nice firm basis to really quickly pick it up. She still has been working and doing a lot of sculpting, and she has come a very long way. Like she said, the details, her oldest sculpts had a lot of detail that wouldn't print, and then areas that could have had more detail but didn't. But she's still amazing, and what she's got now is just amazing. And of course, Miguel's got the weirdest mutant cat in existence in his lap right now.
It's just my baby Jurassic. So I hate to do this also, but I actually have a flight in the morning and I need to get going as well.
That's okay. We've been going for an hour and a half now, so.
Well, I just want to say it was a pleasure to speak to you all and to answer some questions. And this is a field that's only going to get bigger. So I'm looking forward to having another discussion about like this and answering more questions.
Okay.
I want to thank y'all for your time and for putting this together. This was really informative, actually.
Okay. Do you have
It's been a lot of fun.
Do you have time to answer Jonathan's question? How much time do you spend on a model?
I usually spend let's see. If it's something that I've done before and it just needs to be a remix of something, then I usually need like about a half hour to an hour. If it's something that's brand new, fresh, like just a sphere to become something else, I usually need about 2 hours, and then it's fine. And I always remember that when I model something that I know it's going to be this big, so I don't have to get to Square Enix levels of detail usually. That saves me a lot of time. However, if it is a very large print, like my little baby Tarrasque over here, then I would add probably like an extra hour, maybe 2, to get all those extra details in there. So that's usually my time limit.
Yeah, Matthew?
Well, I honestly wouldn't be able to say a lot.
Bye, Miguel.
Oh yeah, you guys have a good night.
I'm getting another picture into the chat. Yep. Have a good one.
Later.
So for every model that I put up, there's about a dozen or 2 unfinished on my hard drive. I tend to bounce around from project to project a lot, just working on models for little bits and pieces, fits and starts. The picture in there is of a model that I finished in April, but had been working on since last year.
Links don't go into the chat.
Really?
It's my channel. If you're putting it into the Google Hangout chat, they can't see it.
No, I'm
putting
it in the YouTube chat.
Yeah, unfortunately, you're not. This is since I'm on broadcasting. It's my channel, and you're not a mod there.
Sorry about that.
I can put like if you can put it into the Hangout chat, I can then put it into the YouTube chat. Okay.
There you go.
And then copy link address.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. And there we go. Oh no, that's not it. What the heck? All right.
Should be a link to a Reddit picture.
Yeah, let me go ahead and do it this way. Copy. And then Yeah, there we go. In my case, well, anyone who comes to my channel usually sees this. Because I have that base human figure done, I can do a figure like this one, which is from Thursday, actually. No, not yeah, Thursday, and then I did it. I finished it up a little bit this afternoon, in about 2.5 hours total, and that's with asking the person I made that for questions while I was sculpting it and waiting on his replies. So
Very cool. Yeah, if I was able to, honestly, I don't know. If I was able to sit down and work continuously on a model or set of models, a couple hours. That's one of those kind of, it's done when I'm either sick of looking at it or just feel like I've spent enough time on it.
well, if I was going to be doing something,
so often.
yeah, if I was going to be doing something like, say, I was going to do an entire redesign of the striking scorpions from Warhammer 40k. What I would probably end up doing is making a base mesh of the fully armored scorpion, and then additional little prop meshes as what's called an insert mesh brush of things like their plasma grenades, tassels, random gems.
Oh yeah.
And then just pose the base mesh, export, add on details, fuse it into one model, decimate to a printable level of polygons, like around 50,000 polygons, or triangles. And that way, once I had the base done, it just bang, 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 bang.
Yep. Same thing in CAD. Once you've got the basic dude done, then for the next couple, it's just reposing and adding all the same little bits on the first one, just from parts to assemblies.
Okay, well, since it's down to just me and Matthew, are there any further questions, or can we go ahead and do the good night? We're gonna give them about another, let's say 3 minutes for some questions to pipe in, time enough for them to both overcome YouTube lag and type out their questions.
Sounds good.
Okay, so
This has been fun, though.
Yeah, that means we get to sing the Jeopardy theme 6 times.
Sounds good. Ready?
I'll take movies for 500, Alex. This dark tale was produced by Tim. Oh God, the name. Who's the guy that did Nightmare Before Christmas?
Tim Burton.
Yeah, it was produced by Tim Burton and stars Johnny Depp and Helena Bonham Carter. What is all of them? Alex?
Every single one, Alex.
Yeah. Yeah, the social media links I'll be adding to the description of the video after the broadcast is over, because we had some technical issues with cameras and that pop up, and I didn't really have time to get them into the description of the video. We're going to try, Jonathan. Yeah, Matthew, what communities are you a part of besides the 40K makers group on Discord?
Well, I'm on Thingiverse. I'm on the 3D Printing Guild on Facebook. I'm on the Photon Users Guild group on Facebook. You can find me on the 40K model making and 3D printing Reddits from time to time.
Okay. And I know Billy.
I'm also on Decadaka a lot.
I know Billy is already knows where I am because she's run into me in almost every single one of them. Billy, by the way, is awesome. She is really, really nice, really, really cool. And she's on the opposite side of the planet from us.
Oh, I used to be there.
Crikey! Any country that can produce the quokka is worth saving. I'm sorry. Have you seen a quokka?
Fear the emus.
No.
Absolutely precious.
Have you seen a quokka?
No, not in person.
Oh my God! they're probably the happiest looking animals on the face of the planet. They can actually smile.
Oh yeah, not allowed to touch them though. They're pretty
Nope.
serious about that.
Oh yeah, unless you're a zookeeper, and then you can pick them up and they start licking all over you.
It's like when we flipped possums though. The Australian possum is one of the most adorable things, but you'd expect to find the American one down there.
Yeah. Well, it's like, have you ever seen the difference between a European badger and a North American badger?
Shocking.
The European badger, to quote the meme, looks like he's about to invite you into his cottage for tea. The North American badger looks like he's about to mug you in a dark alley and take everything you own.
Well, one has a cottage in a glade, and one has a cabin in the woods.
Yeah, there you go. Well,
All right.
I think the social media may have been the last question because nobody else asked. So, for anyone who doesn't know, I'm also on like 5 different Facebook groups dealing with 3D sculpting and miniatures, including the Dragon Lock group, 3D Tabletop Printing Guild. I'm not very active on Reddit, but I'm on the 3D printed minis group there. I'm on like 5 different 3D printing discords, including the oh god, there's just a list. But
There are.
I
Well,
tend
the community has just exploded in the last 2 years.
well the tabletop. I think it's the Tabletop 3D Printing Guild or
3D printed tabletop.
3D printed tabletop is there's another one too, but one of the Facebook groups has like 12,000 members now.
Mm.
Yep. Well, and thank you, Mark. Thank everyone who came by to watch this video. And like I said, I'm going to be sending the recording of it to the other 3 participants, and I'm hopefully they're going to put it up on their channel. I'm not worried about
Yep, you'll be able to see it on the Maker's Call later.
Yeah, I'm not worried about the views for me. I'm worried about people being able to see this video so that they can learn what they need to learn, because I am all about as many people as possible learning to sculpt, learning to make their miniatures, learning to print them, learning to paint them, so that they can make what they want to make.
Plus, the technology is becoming more available and more affordable. It's just incredible the amount of potential that these things. I keep having to tell people in real life. They ask me, "Can you make this? Can you make that?" And I say, "Yes, I can make anything. If you can think of it, I can make it on this machine."
If you think it, it will print.
I mean, this just some of the things I've messed around with just for the heck of it. I mean, I have on my wall. I'm gonna move my camera. On my wall, paint holders.
Mm-hmm.
Honeycomb shaped paint holders that fit the Army Painter, the Vallejo, and the Warcolor paints just nicely.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, I mean, I felt a need to get it. I felt a need for it, so I did it. And that's that. Anyway, it is 9:36, and we have lost half of our people in the broadcast. I don't know how many people we've gained or lost on the YouTube side of things. But we'd like to thank you all for coming out.
All right.
Whoever's channel you see this on, don't forget the whole like, subscribe, bell icon nonsense and the whole blah, 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 whatever. But subscribe to these people. And I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to count to 10.
All right. Well, thank you very much for having me.
When I do this, I'm basically going to kind of wiggle my hand. When I get down to that, I'm going to be switching back over to XSplit and stopping the broadcast. I'm doing that so I can keep up with YouTube's... Oh, wait. I can't do that because I can't look at the screen without causing the infinite cascade. I'm just gonna say we're gonna count down 10 seconds, and then I'm gonna do it. Okay. There's gonna be
10,
9,
9,
8,
8,
7,
7,
slower.
6, 5,
5, 4,
4, 3, 2, 1.